Oh, come on, stop playing the victim. Invictus was admirable, but Harry was bitter about everything. Now, okay, I will not criticize the Invictus Games. I've got to say it is the very best that we have seen from Prince Harry. And it's nearly impossible to really criticize the role that Harry played in its inception and his appearances in Heart of Invictus. That's the new 5-part Netflix docuseries focusing on the work and the achievements of this organization. But even so, as always, when it comes to Harry, there are some things we got to talk about. So maybe I'm being a little too nitpicky, maybe I'm being too hard on Harry. But anyway, the first thing we have got to talk about is the basically empty language that Harry uses in all his Invictus speeches. It's in that familiar, self righteous, preachy tone that suggests that nobody's doing anything about anything except for him. In episode 4, we hear him say the world needs to be reminded of the power of the human spirit. That was from his 2022 opening address to the Invictus Games in The Hague. What on earth is he talking about? I mean, who writes this nonsense for him? I think I've got a good idea, somebody who's a real big fan of word salad. I mean, how could anybody be completely oblivious to something that is so incredibly obvious? Millions of people are inspired by the power of the human spirit every single day. In fact, I don't think there are many people in this world who would say that they're never moved or inspired by other people, by the human spirit, as Harry puts it. I mean, how many people are walking around going, oh yeah, the human spirit, nothing to see there, I wasn't impressed. That ginger turd really is bitter about everything, isn't he? But anyway, the idea of the games was really not his alone. Instead, it was borrowed from America's Warrior Games. He cannot take full credit for it. Just like everything else, Harry's truth is a little bit doubtful at best, and his reputation with the armed forces is basically done. Invictus really is not supposed to be the Harry show. I'm afraid that he's actually going to hurt the cause by being involved in and by always talking about himself. But anyway, back to the human spirit. I mean, there are plenty of examples. Let's think about the recent plight of students who were stuck on a broken cable car in Pakistan. I mean, there was that daring rescue mission that saved them. And what about the 4 kids who survived 40 days all alone in the Amazon rainforest? They were living on fruit that they picked. I mean, the human spirit is out there and it is doing great. Like being hurt or misunderstood, I'm sorry, but this is not something that Harry can claim as all his own and nobody else has ever experienced. See, that's really the problem with him. He seems to believe that he's the only person who's ever had it rough, who's ever had a problem with his family. I don't know if he's trying to make himself seem more relatable, but he really ends up being less relatable. He ends up being repellent because he ends up having this sense of victimhood that is just not attractive. Like he's the only person in the world who've ever suffered. Now, to his credit, he does a good job of shining the spotlight on these soldiers, these brave men and women with life changing injuries. These people were hurt and disfigured in the service of their own countries for doing what their government asked of them, and that is never something to scoff at. And what I really love most about Invictus is that it gives us a chance to really look at them and the triumph of their lives instead of trying to look away. It makes us really consider the sacrifice that they made for freedom and for us. But it does take a special kind of able bodied, healthy person to bear witness to the limbless and the wounded, the double amps as they call them, the blind, the maimed, and then dare to talk about losing his mother when he was a 12-year-old boy. Harry, come on now, you know better than that. But apparently he doesn't. I mean, he said, I was unable to cry, unable to feel in one episode, and that's a theme that he keeps going back to again and again. Seriously, folks, what is wrong with him? Why does he think that it's okay to talk about his mother passing away? Not that it wasn't a sad event, but still, this is supposed to be about the soldiers, not about him. But anyway, he also says when it all came fizzing out, I was bouncing off the walls. And then he said he was lying on the floor in a fetal position. And he took the opportunity to whine about a lack of support from his family and how they should have offered therapy to him earlier. So, throughout all 5 parts of this well produced series, there are multiple trigger warnings about mental health problems and encouragements for people who are in torment to seek help. But after all the years that he supposedly spent in therapy, is Harry really the best person to advertise its benefits? I mean, just look at him. A lot of times it sounds like he's just stuck in this same old loop of negative thoughts. And some of his explanations were just hilarious. He said, I found myself, I now need to get a glass jar and put myself in, leave the lid open, and my therapist said, you choose what comes in and everything else bounces off. Oh, okay then. Thanks, Harry. I'm glad now we understand. Honestly, folks, what on earth was he even talking about? And I'm not trying to detract from the people who participate in the Invictus Games. They are amazingly inspiring. And we learn early on how the prince was motivated to start Invictus by seeing wounded soldiers sharing his flight back from Afghanistan in 2013. So he wondered how he could help to ease their trauma and give new meaning to their destroyed lives. He thought that through sport would be the best way. And yeah, that was a great idea. I commend his inspiration. I commend his energy in making this vision a reality. It is something to be admired. So let's compare what Harry has done with Invictus to any philanthropic impact made by Prince Andrew, his disgraced uncle. And you can see clearly who is the better man here. I keep trying to give Harry credit, I keep on trying to like him, but then he goes and says something that makes it basically impossible. The blame game that he loves to play is just not a game I really enjoy. So Harry's convinced that the Afghan war and its military casualties weren't covered by the UK media. Now, not only is that not true, it's just lazy to say. It's a slur on all those war correspondents who risked their lives covering the conflict, and many of those people never even came home. I understand Harry's at war with the British media and he's not about to give it up, but his ignorance suggests that he never even read a newspaper. Harry's a glamorous, supportive, but really weak presence. Now, Meghan attends a few Invictus meetings. She wears a scarlet ball gown to go with Harry to a veterans gala in New York in episode 2, and she describes him as my incredible husband in episode 4. And I guess in some ways I agree. He is incredible, isn't he? Not only for allowing himself to be introduced like that in the very first episode as a humanitarian, environmentalist, mental health wellness advocate, and military veteran Harry. Oh, well, doesn't that sound impressive? What a resume that is. In the end, though, Heart of Invictus is a search for validation and healing. As much for Prince Harry as anybody else, but last time I checked, it wasn't supposed to be about him. Wouldn't it be nice if Harry could just let Invictus be what it's supposed to be and stop using it as a little pity party for himself? I know that maybe his feelings tell him otherwise, but Harry is not, and he will not be the last person to lose a parent at a young age. Harry just seems to ignore the fact as well that his brother and the future king, Prince William, also lost his mother, and he wasn't much older than Harry. Just think of all the stories you've heard of families who were torn apart because of car accidents. Maybe the parents and one child passed away and a child or two survives. Just imagine how difficult that was for them. But see, the fact that Harry keeps going on and on about how horrible his life has been, how unfair it's all been, how tragic, how traumatic, he really just shows how out of touch he is. It's pitiful. The Invictus Games are not supposed to be about Prince Harry's problems. Seems like Harry just can't face the fact that, you know what, he still had it pretty good growing up. He's lived an incredibly privileged life. Most people who lost a parent at a young age, no, I'll say everybody who also lost a parent at a young age, except for William, didn't get to grow up in a royal family. They were much less privileged than Harry has been. And none have acted like Harry has. Neither have they been disloyal to their family, and especially to their aging grandparents. I never hear a word of self-pity from people who I know who have experienced something similar. To be fair, I haven't witnessed or read about self-pity from other people who have suffered this type of loss. Now, maybe he was always like this in private, but still, to me, it looks like this whole pity party got a lot worse after Meghan entered the scene. So perhaps less attention to Harry and Meghan would be the best thing going forward. Unfortunately, it looks like Harry really is co-opting the Invictus Games to make it all about himself and all about his problems. He and Meghan have turned it into another self-promotion. The veterans deserve a lot more. And I do hope that they ask Harry to step away and let somebody with integrity take over. It's not right to allow him to remain in charge. Because Harry is always going to act like this. He has been cushioned from reality his entire life, and he's always going to be trying to play the victim. Harry really was too young to feel the full impact of losing his mother. And he was too busy when she called him to try to talk to him. I mean, he didn't know that it was going to be for the last time, but I think that's part of why he feels so much guilt. See, Diana was not even usually with her kids like most mothers are. She just knew how to do some really good PR. It's important that everybody remembers what Invictus is all about. It's all about those brave servicemen and women. It is not about Harry being so selfish and spoiled that he has to get all the attention for himself. He's always trying to bring it right back to his story. but maybe he needs to consider the fact that people don't want to hear his story anymore. And you, what do you think about Harry and Meghan? Please tell me your opinion below in the comments. If you enjoy my videos, please don't be afraid to like and share them with anybody else who needs them anytime you want. And don't be afraid to click the subscribe button to get more updates in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back to see you all tomorrow.